Have you ever wondered why you feel lonely, or why it's difficult for you to deeply connect with others? In this video, we delve into the insights of Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, on loneliness and the challenges of finding authentic friendships. Jung encourages us to look beyond superficial causes and explore the depths of our own being, our shadows, and personal growth. Discover how your personality, fears, and connection with your true self can shape your relationships, and how, through greater self-understanding, you can transform your social and emotional life. For Carl Jung, loneliness was not merely a matter of physical isolation, but a manifestation of a much deeper problem rooted in the most hidden layers of the human mind. Jung asserted that when a person disconnects from their own essence, an invisible barrier emerges, preventing true connection with others, no matter how sociable they try to be or how many people surround them. This disconnection is related to unintegrated aspects of our psyche, repressed elements, traumas, desires, and emotions relegated to the unconscious, which now silently affect our social interactions. From Jung's perspective, our psyche consists of both a personal unconscious, where individual experiences and past traumas are stored, and a collective unconscious, a universal repository of images, symbols, and patterns shared by all humanity. This collective unconscious contains what Jung called archetypes, universal forms of human experience that influence our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, often without our awareness. When these repressed or unacknowledged elements emerge in our daily lives, they appear as internal tensions, unresolved desires, or emotions that hinder our sense of belonging and closeness with others. For instance, someone who has repressed their fear of rejection might unconsciously come across as indifferent or distant, thus creating a cycle of self-isolation. In other cases, repressed emotions may lead to excessive reactions in social situations, which can alienate others and further reinforce their loneliness. For Jung, this form of self-imposed loneliness is a sign that our relationship with the unconscious needs to be re-evaluated. Rather than trying to avoid painful or uncomfortable emotions, Jung suggests that we explore and accept these aspects of our psyche. Only through introspection and self-acceptance can we release the energy trapped in the unconscious, allowing relationships to develop with greater fluidity and authenticity. Therefore, according to Jung, the true solution to loneliness lies in healing our internal relationship with ourselves. This quest for genuine connection with our inner self is a form of reconciliation between the conscious and the unconscious. Only by undertaking this journey of self-knowledge and acceptance of our own shadows can we open ourselves to authentic connections with others, experiencing relationships without the barriers imposed by the unconscious psyche. In Jungian thought, complexes are unconscious emotional cores formed by past experiences that were not fully assimilated or understood. These complexes can shape our perception and response to the world, acting as filters that distort reality. By operating covertly, complexes tend to provoke intense and irrational emotional reactions, leading to behaviors that seem beyond our control. This dynamic is particularly relevant in the realm of relationships, where complexes can act as barriers that complicate or even prevent genuine connection with others. Complexes originate from significant personal experiences, especially those related to trauma, abuse, or dysfunctional relationships during childhood. As we grow, these experiences leave lasting imprints on our psyche, forming emotional patterns that influence how we interpret interactions with others. For example, a person who grew up in an environment of rejection or abandonment might develop an inferiority complex, making them feel unworthy of love or acceptance. This complex manifests as a constant fear of rejection, causing the person to avoid deep relationships or even consciously sabotage the connections they manage to establish. Moreover, complexes also act as mirrors of our inner world, projecting onto others aspects of ourselves that we have not accepted or resolved. Thus, instead of seeing people for who they truly are, we interpret them through the filter of our complexes, complicating the establishment of healthy relationships. Someone suffering from a control complex, for instance, might interpret a friend's acts of dependence as signs of disloyalty or betrayal, even when these acts have no relation to their internal fears. This kind of distorted projection is one way in which complexes hinder genuine closeness. To overcome the influence of complexes in our relationships, Jung recommended a process of self-knowledge and conscious work in which the individual observes and understands their behavior patterns. This practice not only allows us to identify the underlying causes of complexes, but also diminishes their power by bringing them into consciousness. By honestly confronting these parts of ourselves, we can release the energy trapped in these unconscious patterns, paving the way for more genuine and profound relationships. The process is challenging, but offers the possibility of more balanced relationships, free from the distortions imposed by complexes. True friendship, according to Jung, is born from the emotional freedom that comes from liberating the psyche from these invisible burdens. In our culture, friendship is often presented as an ideal of unwavering unity, absolute loyalty, and infinite understanding. This archetype of the perfect friend creates unrealistic expectations that can become a trap in the pursuit of genuine relationships. Jung understood that ideals are constructs reflecting our deep desires, but when we cling too tightly to them, they act as barriers rather than guides. The expectation of finding someone who meets the ideal of the perfect friend inevitably leads to disappointment, as no real person can fulfill all the characteristics of such an idealized image. For Jung, this search for perfection in others is, in fact, a reflection of our own insecurities and fears of confronting the reality of human imperfection. When we idealize others, we project onto them qualities we ourselves aspire to have, hoping that this idealized friendship will be a source of validation and stability. However, this projection causes us to lose sight of the real person, replacing them with an image constructed according to our expectations. In the process, we also distance ourselves from our own weaknesses, using them as an excuse to justify why we cannot find friends worthy of our friendship. Accepting the imperfection of others is one of the fundamental lessons in developing mature relationships. Jung maintained that true friendships are not always a reflection of constant harmony, but a balance of acceptance and patience in the face of differences and conflicts. Differences between friends are necessary because they allow us to see the reality of the other person and learn to value their unique qualities without trying to mold them. According to our expectations, frustrations and conflicts, when handled properly, strengthen the bond and promote personal and mutual growth instead of weakening it. Emotional maturity involves accepting that true friendships can be irregular, and that the value of a relationship lies in both individuals' ability to overcome idealized expectations and accept reality with its ups and downs. This acceptance frees a person from the need to find the perfect friend, allowing for more genuine and satisfying relationships where both parties can be accepted and valued for who they truly are. One of the most profound and challenging concepts in Jung's theory is the archetype of the shadow, that part of ourselves that contains desires, emotions, and impulses we prefer not to acknowledge. The shadow is made up of those aspects we have learned to reject because they do not fit our conscious self-image. For example, we might repress feelings of envy, anger, or insecurity because we believe they are unworthy of us. However, rejecting these aspects does not make them disappear. Instead, they accumulate in the unconscious, generating an emotional burden that affects our relationships without our full awareness. Jung warned that by ignoring or repressing the shadow, it projects onto the external world, leading us to judge others with a harshness that actually reflects our discomfort with ourselves. In relationships, the shadow acts as a barrier that interferes with our ability to connect authentically with others. By projecting our own flaws or insecurities onto others, we see in them issues that actually belong to us. For instance, a person who represses their aggression may perceive others as overly hostile or unsympathetic, when in reality, they are confronting their own fear of facing negative emotions. For Jung, confronting the shadow is not just a process of introspection, but also a path to emotional freedom. Recognizing the shadow means accepting that we are complete human beings with both flaws and virtues, and that every repressed emotion or desire has a reason for being. By allowing ourselves to see these hidden aspects, we begin to disarm their power over us. Integrating the shadow is essential for developing deep relationships, as it allows us to see and accept others as they are without imposing our own insecurities or judgments. Engaging with the shadow does not mean justifying negative behaviors, but understanding their origins and learning how to manage them constructively. A person who recognizes and accepts their shadow can see others with greater compassion and empathy, creating an atmosphere of trust and sincerity in their relationships. This openness reduces the tension generated by unconscious projections and allows us to experience real intimacy without fear that others will discover our imperfections. Instead of fleeing from the darker aspects of our psyche, shadow work invites us to reconcile with them, achieving greater inner peace and, consequently, a better disposition to connect honestly. Carl Jung was one of the first to define introversion and extroversion as fundamental tendencies of the human psyche, with profound implications for our social relationships. For Jung, introversion involves an inclination toward the inner world, where the individual finds their sense of energy and balance. Extroverts, by contrast, are oriented toward the outer world, finding satisfaction in social interaction and activities involving other people. Both types, according to Jung, have strengths and weaknesses in the context of relationships, and the key to avoiding loneliness lies in understanding and accepting these tendencies rather than trying to change them. For introverts, loneliness is often a constant companion, not always from a lack of desire to connect, but because their orientation toward the inner world makes their social experiences different. Introverts tend to distrust superficial interactions and prefer deep, meaningful connections. However, this preference can make them feel that casual relationships are a waste of time, leading them to avoid social situations and limit their opportunities to meet new people. Jung argued that the integration of introversion must involve recognizing that the external world also has value, and that balance lies in finding moments to enjoy both introspection and interaction. On the other hand, extroverts often face the paradox of feeling lonely despite being surrounded by people. Their desire to connect can lead them to have many friendships or contacts, but they often lack the emotional depth that introverts value. This is because, in their constant search for external stimulation, they may overlook the introspection necessary to build deep relationships. Jung proposed that the balance for extroverts lies in seeking moments of internal reflection, where they can understand their true needs and desires without relying entirely on external validation. Self-knowledge, therefore, is essential for both types. Jung did not consider either introversion or extroversion as better or worse, but as different approaches that, if understood and consciously managed, can lead to balanced and satisfying relationships. Introverts can learn to appreciate casual social relationships without feeling they are betraying their nature, while extroverts can cultivate an internal connection that allows them to enjoy solitude without fear. By embracing these tendencies with acceptance and balance, each person can improve their ability to connect genuinely, avoiding the extremes that lead to loneliness and isolation. Individuation is one of the central concepts in Jung's work, and refers to the process of developing an authentic identity that integrates both the conscious and the unconscious. Jung saw individuation as a path to personal fulfillment, in which the individual frees themselves from external expectations and connects with their true essence. This process can be long and lonely, but is also one of the most liberating experiences, as it allows the individual to discover who they really are and what they need to feel complete. Through individuation, people can shed social masks and imposed expectations, achieving more genuine and meaningful relationships. During the process of individuation, it is common for individuals to experience periods of loneliness. Jung considered this loneliness a necessary component, as it allowed the person to distance themselves from external influences and reflect on their identity and values. This stage of isolation, though difficult, helps shed external expectations and develop a solid foundation of self-knowledge. When one is not clinging to imposed ideals, they become more authentic in their relationships, which facilitates others being drawn to their true essence rather than a superficial image. The result of individuation is a person who no longer depends on external approval to feel valuable. By knowing and accepting their strengths and weaknesses, the individual finds within themselves a source of satisfaction that allows them to relate to others without seeking validation. This does not mean that individuated individuals do not value relationships, but rather that they approach them from a position of authenticity and autonomy. In doing so, they can connect deeply and sincerely without the need to meet expectations or maintain an idealized image. Jung saw individuation as a liberating transformation, in which a person meets their true self and establishes a balance between the forces of their psyche. The relationships that emerge after this process are more meaningful and enduring because they are based on honest connection, free from the need to please or impress. Ultimately, individuation allows people to experience relationships that nurture and enrich their lives rather than depending on them to fill emotional voids. For Carl Jung, the collective unconscious is a fundamental structure of the psyche shared by all humanity. Unlike the personal unconscious, which is built from individual experiences and memories, the collective unconscious houses archetypes, universal images and behavior patterns that have accompanied humanity throughout history. These archetypes are inherited patterns that influence our emotions, thoughts and behaviors, often without our conscious awareness. This shared reservoir, according to Jung, enables a deep, unconscious connection between humans that transcends cultural and temporal barriers. The collective unconscious has profound implications for our relationships because it facilitates understanding and empathy toward others. Even if we are unaware of it, archetypes shape our perceptions and attitudes toward the people we meet. For example, the mother archetype may evoke feelings of care and protection toward others, even if we do not have a close relationship with them. Similarly, the hero archetype inspires respect for those who face difficulties with courage. These types of connections, rooted in the collective unconscious, make it possible to feel affinity and closeness toward people we have barely interacted with. However, while the collective unconscious fosters connection, it can also be a source of conflict if archetypes are not adequately integrated. When a person lives in discord with the behavioral patterns dictated by their collective unconscious, they may experience internal dissonance, leading them to reject or avoid those who represent those archetypes. This can result in tensions and misunderstandings, as the person may feel that others are against them or fail to understand them, without realizing that they are in conflict with deep aspects of their own psyche. In working with the collective unconscious, Jung emphasized the importance of accepting and acknowledging these archetypes within ourselves. This acceptance allows us to see the universal aspects in the people we meet, recognizing that deep down we all share these same archetypal structures. This recognition enables the development of deeper empathy and understanding that transcends individual differences. By connecting with these universal patterns, our relationships can become more authentic as we see each other in the fullness of the shared human experience. One of Jung's most enigmatic and fascinating concepts is synchronicity, a theory describing events that seem connected by meaning rather than by logical cause. According to Jung, synchronicity occurs when two or more events coincide meaningfully without a causal relationship, but have a profound emotional impact on the person experiencing them. These events can be interpreted as signs of a deeper connection between the mind and the external world, suggesting that relationships and encounters that seem coincidental may actually have significant purpose. Synchronicity plays an important role in human relationships, especially in those that have a transformative effect on our lives. Jung observed that during periods of personal change or crisis, people tend to experience more synchronicities, as if the unconscious is working to guide them toward meaningful encounters or experiences. For example, during times of personal growth or therapy, it is common for people to meet someone who seems to have appeared at the perfect moment, offering support or provoking reflections that push them toward greater self-understanding. These experiences not only reinforce our sense of connection with others, but also awaken in us a feeling that there is something beyond mere coincidence in our social interactions. Synchronicity acts as a kind of internal guide, showing us people or situations that can help us advance in our personal and emotional development. This form of connection is especially relevant in friendship and love, where it is common to feel that someone has entered our life for a reason. For Jung, paying attention to these synchronicities can enrich our relationships, allowing us to see that certain encounters or bonds are not merely coincidental, but opportunities for growth and self-knowledge. Through synchronicity, a person learns to perceive relationships as something that transcends logic and reason, recognizing the role of the unconscious and the universe in weaving human connections. By adopting this perspective, we open the door to experiencing our relationships more deeply and meaningfully, seeing in each connection an opportunity to explore the mystery of life and the human soul. The hero archetype, another central concept in Jung's work, represents the journey of self-discovery and personal overcoming that we must all undertake at some point in our lives. On this path, solitude may arise as an inevitable and necessary trial, a space in which the individual confronts their fears, limitations, and hidden desires. Jung considered the hero to be one who faces life's difficulties with courage, not because they are free from fears, but because they are willing to confront them and explore their own being. The hero's journey begins with a separation from the known and an immersion into the unknown, a phase where the individual may experience profound loneliness. This period of solitude, however, is not merely a time of emptiness, but a time of introspection, where the person learns about themselves and develops the skills necessary to face life's challenges. In the context of relationships, the hero archetype drives individuals to seek genuine connections and to be selective about the relationships they choose to cultivate. During this journey, the hero learns to value authenticity over superficial acceptance. This stage of self-understanding, in which the individual works on personal growth, fosters emotional independence, enabling the establishment of stronger and more enduring bonds. By understanding their own motivations and limitations, the hero also becomes more empathetic and compassionate, allowing for deeper connections with others without projecting unresolved insecurities or desires onto them. In this sense, Jung believed that solitude is not a condemnation, but a necessary stage in the hero's journey, a space that allows for the self-awareness and emotional growth needed to build relationships based on authenticity. Thus, the hero is an archetype of growth, demonstrating that to truly connect with others, we must first embark on a journey toward our own self, facing solitude not as an enemy but as an ally in the process of self-discovery. Transference is a psychological phenomenon that Jung considered essential for understanding relational difficulties. It refers to the act of projecting emotions and expectations from past experiences onto others, often creating misunderstandings and conflicts. During transference, people commonly see in their friends or partners the qualities or flaws of significant figures in their lives, such as parents or caregivers. This means that rather than relating to others as they truly are, we tend to interpret them through the lens of our own unresolved experiences and needs. Transference can become a trap that limits our ability to connect with others, as projecting our emotions onto them prevents us from seeing them as independent individuals, instead transforming them into reflections of our own emotional deficiencies. For example, someone who had a conflicted relationship with a distant parent might project that experience onto their partner, interpreting any distance as abandonment or rejection. This distorted perception hinders the growth of the relationship, as the other person becomes a symbolic figure rather than an individual with their own complexities. To overcome transference, Jung proposed working on self-understanding and developing the ability to see and accept people as they truly are, without judging or fitting them into our internal schemas. This process requires conscious and sustained effort to recognize projections and understand their origins. According to Jung, therapy is a space where transference can be explored and disarmed, allowing relationships to develop from a foundation of respect and authenticity. By overcoming transference, it becomes possible to experience more sincere and satisfying relationships, where each person can express their individuality without being constrained by the expectations or fears of the other. This emotional liberation enables friendships and romantic relationships to be built on a solid foundation, providing a true opportunity for mutual growth and deep understanding. Jung introduced the wise old man archetype as one of the most powerful symbolic figures of the collective unconscious. This figure represents the guide, the inner mentor, who offers wisdom and insight to help us face life's trials. The wise old man does not always appear in our psyche in an obvious way. Sometimes his wisdom manifests through sudden intuitions, profound dreams, or individuals who come into our lives to provide guidance at crucial moments. Jung believed that, in the quest for genuine friendships and connections, this archetype plays an essential role, helping us make decisions with greater emotional clarity and discern between superficial relationships and those with true potential for growth. When we are not connected to this inner archetype, it is easy to seek validation and guidance outside ourselves, which can lead to imbalanced relationships. Without a link to the wise old man, we tend to idealize those around us, believing that others must resolve our doubts or fill our emotional voids. This type of projection can strain relationships, as no friend or partner can fulfill the role of the inner guide our psyche requires. Jung emphasized that connecting with the wise old man allows us to access a profound wisdom that does not depend on others, giving us the strength and clarity to approach others from a position of balance. Cultivating this archetype involves dedicating time to introspection, meditation, or dream work, practices that can open us to inner guidance. For Jung, dreams are particularly powerful avenues for communication with the wise old man, as he can manifest in the form of archetypal figures such as elders, animal guides, or even abstract symbols that provide deep knowledge. By learning to interpret and connect with these messages, we gain intuitive insight into our relationships, becoming capable of distinguishing who can contribute to our emotional growth and who cannot. In daily life, this archetype also helps us face solitude and moments of confusion with a perspective of learning. By connecting with the wise old man, we understand that solitude can be a phase of growth, not necessarily a state of lack. This figure allows us to see every experience as a lesson, strengthening our ability to relate without emotional dependency on others. Ultimately, the connection with the wise old man fosters greater emotional security and enhances our ability to establish relationships in which each person brings their own authenticity and wisdom without demanding that the other be a source of answers. The divine child archetype represents purity, creativity, and hope. Jung observed that this archetype contains the essence of our undeveloped potential, the capacity to see the world with fresh eyes and experience relationships without the prejudices or wounds of the past. Psychologically, the divine child is that part of us capable of trusting and opening up to others genuinely and fearlessly, even after being hurt. This archetype helps us maintain faith in people and in the intrinsic goodness of human relationships, despite the painful experiences we may have had. However, as we grow, we tend to repress this archetype, viewing innocence and trust as weaknesses. This is especially true if we have experienced disappointments or betrayals, as the pain leads us to distrust and build barriers to protect ourselves from future wounds. Repressing the divine child can make our relationships calculated, defensive, or lacking in genuine openness. Jung believed that to restore authenticity in our connections, it is essential to restore our relationship with this archetype and allow our divine child to reclaim its place in our psyche. To connect with the divine child, Jung recommended engaging in creative activities that awaken our spontaneity and joy, such as music, art, writing, or even play. These activities allow us to express our emotions and thoughts without the filter of adult rationality. Moreover, by unleashing our creativity, we learn to trust the process and life itself, creating a space where the divine child can manifest. This reconnection with our inner innocence is also reflected in our relationships, as it enables us to approach others with a more open attitude, without expecting perfection or fearing rejection. By restoring the divine child, we gain a greater capacity to enjoy relationships as they are, without demanding they meet adult expectations or unattainable ideals. Instead of focusing on what is lacking or on past mistakes, this archetype reminds us that every interaction is an opportunity for growth and to experience the joy of human connection. Ultimately, the divine child helps us see relationships as sources of learning and emotional satisfaction, allowing us to engage with them more lightly and gratefully. This perspective brings renewed energy and a capacity for forgiveness that transforms our connections into deeply healing and enriching experiences. In Jung's theory, the lover archetype represents the deep desire for connection, passion, and the yearning for union that resides within us all. This archetype is not limited to romantic relationships, but encompasses the capacity to love and deeply value others and the world around us. The energy of the lover drives us to seek emotional closeness and intimacy, not only on a physical level, but also in a spiritual and emotional sense. For Jung, the lover is essential in our relationships because it brings the passion and depth that make them meaningful, pushing us to form bonds that transcend superficiality. When the lover archetype is repressed or blocked, our relationships can become cold and routine, This repression often occurs as a reaction to experiences of rejection or abandonment, where we learn to emotionally protect ourselves by reducing our capacity to love or express affection. However, this emotional disconnection deprives us of the richness the lover can bring into our lives. Jung emphasized that repressing this archetype leads to an emotional void that we often try to fill with superficial substitutes, such as materialism or relationships without genuine commitment, which ultimately leave us unsatisfied. To reconnect with the lover archetype within us, it's essential to express our emotions openly and embrace vulnerability without fear. Jung believed that this kind of emotional openness reflects strength, not weakness. By welcoming love in all its forms, we experience a sense of fulfillment that doesn't depend on immediate reciprocation, but rather on the genuine act of giving and receiving affection. This depth of love extends beyond romantic relationships, enriching friendships, family bonds, creative pursuits, and any connections where we can show our authentic selves. The lover archetype also teaches us to recognize and appreciate beauty in others and in the world around us. By cultivating this appreciation, we see people more deeply, valuing their unique qualities and imperfections alike. In relationships, the lover brings an energy of renewal, reminding us that each connection is an opportunity to live with greater passion and gratitude. This archetype encourages us to love without limits, fully embracing each experience and seeing every relationship as a path for growth and transformation. By embracing the lover archetype, we understand that the true power of relationships lies in our capacity to love freely and in the courage to open ourselves to the unknown. In this openness, we find the profound richness of human life, where vulnerability becomes a gateway to connection, growth, and meaning.